biomedical as well as engineering, artificial intelligence kind of advance. And in particular, this boy, Trenton, who got a massive injury last year, and most of the doctors and nurses didn't have any hope, and even parents signed for the organ donation, regained consciousness just 2 days before the operation surgery for the transplantation. And this kind of potentially tragic kind of event is still happening. And this 2009 paper reviewed that 43% of the patients with the disorder of consciousness is misdiagnosed. And there are also many different kind of misdiagnosis or mistreatment during the anesthesia or sleep and things like that happening still. So that's sort of the current state of the consciousness in terms of level of consciousness. And by loss of consciousness, I today focus mostly on 4 types of things. I guess it covers also some of the topics that some of the speakers will be covering. One is about due to the massive brain injury. Second is the sleep and the anesthesia and also general seizure. And I think all of this sort of loss of consciousness has not been well characterized in many ways. And by default, people think they are similar in terms of the first terminology. When you go into this state, you lose everything, but is it true or not? That's the question. And so underlying neural mechanism, as well as sort of the bridging gap between the neural and phenomenology. As a bridging gap, I've been kind of proposing this level of information structure, but this is a sort of hypothetical. Usually, when you talk about information, it is really distinct. It has a distinction between, let's say, stored location and contents of the stored information can be anything. But in terms of the brain, auditory cortex can process only auditory information, and its information affects on the other parts of the brain. So this is very different types of the information structure. Any part of the information affects or affected by other parts. So some kind of theoretical construct that captures this structure of information is, I think, necessary. And if it's lost, I think phenomenology will be lost. This is hypothetical. And then, even though if you accept this, loss of phenomenology and neural mechanism in some way that is disrupted through some sort of the intermediate information-like concept, many things are still also unclear in terms of the transitionary states, like what happens when the brain injuries are less, dramatic, like parts of the brain only impaired, or there are some also vegetative patients whose face area, for example, is completely intact, and when you show the face, then their face area lights up, in FFA completely normally. But do they actually experience face or something like that? That's totally unclear. And sleep in general, as well as even wake, maybe Thomas will talk about today, but sleep and wake may be a mixture of state across the, day and night. That's also unclear. And then anesthesia dosage can be also manipulated throughout. So that's something David or Levin may talk today. And different dosage or different types of anesthesia can also induce different phenomenology, and the different mechanisms are affected. And partial seizures, which also doesn't reduce or remove consciousness entirely, but what's the phenomenological characterization is also not so clear. And thinking about this sort of transitory states, you can also think about consciousness, even the level of consciousness, forget about the contents, through developmental axis as well as evolutionary axis as well. And we need to also understand it in the future. So, so far, most of the sort of previous approach have focused on either 2 types of the consciousness research, and I think you may hear some of it today. This is a review figure from Christoph Cox, Nature Review Neuroscience, 2 years ago. So,
I suggest you fill the lights up the screen there.
Right.
That's all electronic now.
right. So, so some of you who are here are pretty much focused on the contents of consciousness as opposed to the level of consciousness. Like, when you are awake and you're given a stimulus such as this kind of ambiguous stimulus, and then people say that, oh, I saw face or I didn't see face. And then this type of the same stimulus, different conscious contents part of the experiment is usually called as a neural correlates of consciousness, particularly focusing on the contents of consciousness. And here, the brain imaging can reveal the activation pattern for yes, I saw face, and no, I didn't see face, and the contrast gives you, for example, neural correlates of consciousness for the face. And then on the other hand, completely different approach of the neural correlates of consciousness trying to target on the full level or MCC for the full consciousness, such as states are like awake versus non-REM sleep N2, and then here the contrast is whether you see anything or not, or you experience anything or not, and then you again see lots of difference in the brain. But over the last 10 years or so, many people have realized that there are many confounds, and one confound, for example, can be resolved by going into the no-report paradigm where people do see face or not, but do not report. And then we infer it from other types of the technique. And then that removes this contrast in the occipital area. And the other one is that rather than completely, contrasting completely different states, wake versus non-REM, you compare non-REM sleep state itself, but within that, try to isolate with or without dream content, and then subtract it to give the contrast. That's another sort of the potential approach. And moving along, so this is a sort of the standard approach, but today I want to, for the rest of the 7 minutes, I want to introduce some of the sort of ideas that we have these days, which is sort of the marriage of the sort of the theory-driven analysis or experiments to understand level of consciousness, as well as a data-driven understanding of level of consciousness. So the theory-driven is, for example, exemplified theory like integrated information theory, and its inspired version of the part-dimensional complexity index in TMS-EEG experiment, which I think Jorge is going to talk today a bit. And so data-driven one is like mostly traditional bispectral index or other types of the complexity index for level of consciousness. The attitude is whatever it works, it's fine. We don't need to understand the sort of the core theory of consciousness, but let's try to find out what's the most useful index that correlates with the consciousness. And one particular thing which is driven by theory, I just briefly mentioned. So this is a TMS-EEG paradigm. And here, Masmini and Tononi's group have developed this TMS-EEG paradigm when they stimulate the brain with TMS and then looked at the complexity of the brain response, and then using the compression algorithm to come up with some kind of number. In this case, it's 0.55. And then using this, they first did a bunch of experiments across many different subjects and in many different states, like no-report states, sleep and anesthesia, and delayed report in sleep and anesthesia, as well as immediate report, while they are very sure that the subjects are either conscious or not conscious. And then using this, and using ROC analysis, they've arrived this PCI index, a particular index and particular way of computing. You can see that there are lots of dots below it, but what matters according to them is this maximum value, which is a bit problematic. But if you adopt that, then you can perfectly discriminate between conscious and non-conscious. And then when you apply this value, particular value PCI star, to people who are possibly non-conscious or possibly conscious, like minimally conscious states versus vegetative consciousness, vegetative states who are supposedly non-conscious, they say that it's also extremely good in accuracy in the report, like this. So that's probably I think, currently existing the best sort of consciousness meter, but there are lots of difficulty, including also technical and also practicality. Like if you try to put the EEG to these patients, it's not so easy, and even TMS plus EEG in a normal subject is really a mess, so it's really difficult. And also replication by other groups is not really yet done, I would say. So there are lots of steps still, space to fill in this area, and I'll just mention one thing. So this is a recent study that we used so the previous EEG TMS thing, this summary of this complexity index. It's inspired by integrated information in the sense that the theory would say in highly diversified but also integrated pattern of the brain response would correspond to level of consciousness. So this kind of pattern is intermediate in terms of complexity of the pattern and then corresponding to relatively high complexity index. But this is very rough, and nothing to do with the integrated information itself. So rather than doing something like that, we directly computed this integrated information values. And we have been developing this kind of technique over the last several years, and this is the application to the flies. And then here what you're seeing is basically these 4 values using the recording from local field potential of flies when they are either anesthetized or awake. And then if you compute this integrated information appropriately, then we can discriminate between these states very well, like up to 70%. The more we use the channel, like this is a 2-channel, 3-channel, and 4-channel, we became accurate. However, the next slide was, in a sense, kind of shocking to me, but when this student actually, Jamin, tried to just combine all the information available across many different combinations of the integrated information, then it turned out that it did improve overall, but this one, based on just a correlation coefficient, all possible correlation coefficient computed and then combined it in an optimally, turned out to be much, much better. And initially I was really confused by this result, but if I think more and more carefully, maybe this actually indicates that there are some kind of an assumption inherent in IIT is possibly wrong, and that's actually captured by correlation coefficient patterns and so on. So this is a sort of the starting thinking of not only the theory-driven top-down approach, but also bottom-up data-driven approach may inform both in either ways. And the other one that we are working these days is rather than doing sort of selective sort of choice of particular properties of the neural response like power or coherence or complexity in your favorite choice, this analysis called a highly comparative time series analysis prepares many different kind of analysis from the beginning, and then they just run it all brutally. And then what you see in this y-axis here is 200 different kind of analysis, and then performed on each of the 30 seconds sleep data. So for the given 30 seconds data, you get 200 results of the analysis, and then you just hierarchically cluster the result across this y-axis. And if you do that, it's pretty clearly visible that by the way, x-axis is the time over the one sleep night, and then you see that there is some kind of cluster, there is some kind of cluster, and then there is some kind of cluster as well. And then it turned out that by just using simple k-means cluster, we can cluster the 5 stages, and that more or less corresponds to human scores, human sleep staging, this medium role. And then if we just let the EEG to decide particular matching, it could match up to 60 or 70% of the accuracy. And we are considering this as a sort of proof of concept, but also going beyond the traditional sleep staging, that maybe we can discover non-traditional state of consciousness like lucid dreaming or sleep, dreaming state under the non-REM sleep and things like that from the data-driven way in this way. Yes?
I don't know if you're about to go into this, but can you explain what the y-axis is? So you just said there's 200 different analyses. What are like different online algorithms for sleep? Or?
Yeah, so it's at this point it's a very simple feature. Like the top one could be like power at 5 hertz, let's say, and then the second one could be autocorrelation with lag 1 or something like that, and then the third one could be like chaos dimension.
And you picked these 200, or this is a thing that people do in this field?
This is developed by previous postdoc Ben Foucher in this building, and he's now in the University of Sydney. And he originally developed this 7,000, almost 8,000 different kind of analysis coming from economics, seismology, neuroscience to economy, and I said again, many different things. Anything that is available in terms of time series analysis. And then without any prior judgment, he just did it, and then let's see what happens. Yes?
So how do you take into account multiple comparisons?
We don't, yeah.
But then if you get something, is it really that interesting? I mean, if you go fishing that hard, are you going to find something anyway? I mean, I agree, if you give you the lead, then go and look at it in a more statistically sound way.
Yeah, so I totally agree with that point, but if you think about it, fishing and also, determining one particular feature for claiming, index for consciousness meter is actually fishing. And many people usually don't talk about the one that doesn't work, right? So, you made 2 points. First is about the correlation among the measures. And you can see that, among these measures, for example, it's extremely correlated. And mostly, probably it's coming from, let's say, if it's a power from 20 hertz, power from 30 hertz, power from 5 hertz, all of them are correlated. That's, clusters. Or information theory between, information theoretic, coefficient between 2 points before to 4 points before versus, 10 points before to something like that, all of them are correlated. But important thing to realize is that, in the anesthesia field or sleep field or whatever, each of these different particular parameter has been claimed as the, index of consciousness. But if you just be very fair and then test everything, it may be the case that the one that works well is something really stupid. And Ben's favorite example in this paper is that for the detection of the epilepsy in some particular subset of his data is best with the standard deviation over the 5 seconds of the period or something. That's really surprising, but nobody, I think, I'm curious to hear about your epilepsy, kind of detection talk, but according to him, standard deviation seems to be the best predictor. So that's one thing, but I think I already addressed the second one. Okay, how about this? Fine. All right. So my bold claim was the sort of the dissolving the hard problem of consciousness, which what I mean is like if we continue to go through this kind of cycle of the experimentation and also theory verification, eventually we will be able to sort of understand sort of the consciousness in this sort of triangulated way, which without much explaining, I call sort of geometry of consciousness kind of project. And the other one is this synthesizing the top-down and so bottom-up kind of approach for level of consciousness index. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, and I'll take questions. If you have any question.
I have another clarification question there, if no one else is. Just to go back before the slide, well, the fly analysis you did, you can have this back. Where you said, well, we did all these IoT measures, and then the one that got the highest, but it was, can you explain what that was and how you take it to be contradictory to the IoT?
This one?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I'll just, this is, yeah, I didn't explain much about what I did exactly here. So the fly data looks like this. Local field potential is recorded in half of the brain, and then particular set of the channels, local field potential is first recorded and then discretized like 0, 1. And then after that, we construct this probability transition matrix, meaning that this 1, 1 state transits to 0, 1 state, and 0, 1 state transits to 0, 0 state, and so on. And IIT's first assumption is that the system's current state at t is completely determined by the state at t minus 1. And in the technical terms, it's called Markovian assumption. Okay. But the brain is clearly not Markovian. As you may know, that there's lots of memory, and there's also environmental effects, as well as also some kind of oscillatory mechanism in place. So even if you know one particular time state here, the next state is really unlikely to be completely determined. But we assume it in any way. And that assumption can be actually completely defensible if we are able to record everything, including all neuronal activity as well as non-neuronal activity, and then say that this transits to that and so on. But we cannot do that, right? And as a consequence, this even if we compute this, integrated information, which is the sort of the difference between the actually observed transition matrix versus sort of fake transition matrix, assuming that everything is not integrated, have a huge sort of misrepresentation of the system. And the biggest thing is that the presence or absence of the memory in the system. Right? Because this is assuming that one state completely transits to the next. And on the other hand, the correlation coefficient when we compute it, it's a correlation coefficient over was it 2.5 seconds? Yeah. So it does take into account of the sort of the temporal kind of stability and so correlation, which is less actually sensitive than this kind of measure. And that may be one reason. And another thing is that also coming from this analysis called epsilon machine. Yeah, if I just prepared this for the time if I have for different parts. But anyway, so using exactly the same kind of data, what we are trying to do here is to construct the sort of the model of the brain in which it tries to predict the next pattern of the this 0, 1 thing. Let's say if you observe 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, the next one should be 0, something like that. And then you can do it into the sort of 2 channels by making 0, 0 as 1, 0, 1 as 2, 0, 2 as 1, 0 as 3, 1, 1 as 4. And then try to predict the next alphabet based on history. So that explicitly takes into account the history and its complicated sort of structure of the pattern. And this epsilon machine came up with these 2 types of the figures here. One for anesthesia and then one for the wake. Which one do you think is awake? This one, right? And indeed that's the case because I already showed it. It's cheating, but we are now still analyzing this data, but it actually makes a lot of sense to me because if you just look at anesthesia data, it looks like same kind of pattern is kind of repeating. On the other hand, wake data is quite random, really. So this kind of temporal dynamics is completely removed for the IIT analysis at this point, which may point into sort of the future improvement by.
Now, just a general question about the sort of data that might be best to test some of these theories or help develop integrated information theory. Just wondering, like the fly experiments are very interesting because they're very discrete. As I understand it, they look at behavioural responses, right, which are orientations of the fly's motion. But I'm just wondering, do you think the right sort of data has been collected? You mentioned EEG and TMS, for example. It's a person sitting up in a certain context. Do you think other environments like, sensory deprivation environments where people could be somehow monitored, but in that environment you'd remove as many of the external, types of stimuli, and try and just bring it down to the internal, neural processes, including memory and so on? But would that help provide data, do you think, that would be more amenable to modelling with different analytical approaches?
I think so, and maybe you can talk about it. But there was some prominent professor from Germany came to visit Monash like a couple of days ago, Thomas Metzinger, and he's now sort of building sort of new project. Yeah, you were there as well. New project in trying to understand the neural mechanism when meditators, expert meditators, talk about empty consciousness. And that's probably something that you want to also get done, right? Like this sensory deprivation tank and so on. And so far, we have not super good data of this kind. So we can't really say much about that. But the interesting opportunity is, in fact, there is some rich person in Melbourne, High Street. She's actually interested in doing the EEG experiment in the sensory deprivation tank. And she invited me to go there, and then I did it actually, but I didn't see any hallucination. Her friends in Brazil has this new device that can be actually put into people's forehead only, and then from this recording, according to them, can recover the sort of the EEG activity throughout the brain, which sounds kind of weird. But because it's forehead, and if you float, you can actually record neurons.
Near infrared.
I think it's probably EEG, and also probably embed lots of electrodes within here, probably, and then try to infer sort of the source localization kind of thing. But nobody has done that yet.
I guess it was really about what's a way of fly experiments are really interesting. So is there something in the human do which creates a much more controlled environment?
Yeah. So controlled environment is one thing, and also another possibility is really directly, collaborate with the people like these, TMS EEG people. I have a collaboration with them, so I can get their data and then analyze it using IAT or this high HCSTA or some machine or whatever. I just need more people to do that kind of analysis as well. And this is, by the way, human sleep data. Yes. Maybe.
All right. If I can just play devil's advocate for a bit, isn't it slightly problematic using data from flies to actually do anything with consciousness? And the other part of that is that, particularly if we're looking in the primary sensory sort of areas, because we know from experiments with cats and primates that they can be deeply anesthetized, and yet the primary sensory areas can be quite well activated, even though the deeper areas aren't. So isn't the sort of the sensory areas, the wrong areas we're looking when we're talking about consciousness?
Yeah, so the question is about sort of how sort of homologous the mechanism for consciousness, or even the existence of the consciousness in flies and humans, right? I agree that that kind of concern exists, and also now this morning I heard that there is something in the philosophy, so there is no philosophy, I guess, philosophy here, but that's a big issue. But if you look at many different kind of behavior and cognitive and also learning capability throughout the phylogeny, it's very hard to argue any kind of discrete sort of line for with or without consciousness, I would say. Like in the case of the anesthesia in particular, the dosage and also kinds of anesthesia that works for flies and humans and mice and many different kind of across the phylogeny. It's really continuous and almost the same dosage proportion actually works to knock out apparent movement and cognitive capability. And also fly also has, in a sense, visual system is highly organized, very similar way to humans, like starting from array of the receptors and then going to feed forward but with lateral connection and feed back and so on. So if you eventually believe that the neurons, neural mechanisms are responsible for consciousness, it's probably difficult to say. The hard threshold, I think, but this is not proof, and also we need to be very careful. About the fly as well, you might be surprised, but many people have already discovered that the fly sleeps like us, and sleep also seems to have similar kind of function as humans, like consolidation of learning and things like that. So we'll see.
What about this question then of anesthetized animals actually still being able to do recordings in sensory areas, even though they're deeply anesthetized?
But that's true for humans as well.
Yeah, but doesn't that mean that we shouldn't be looking in sensory areas?
To understand consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. And this, IIT, for example, is basically saying that anesthetized or sleeping brain, it's not like a dead brain. It's highly active, highly reactive, and it's just not integrated. And that's the reason why we lose consciousness. So if you look at each individual sensory areas, most likely any animals are probably highly active. And one of the paper for flies actually found that the secondary component of the frequency tagging is actually even bigger under the anesthesia. Yeah.
So this follows on from this question. So in flies, you may know, they experience rivalry, visual rivalry. So Bruno and I wrote a whole paper just on this issue quite a while ago now, 5, 6 years ago now. So that's an awake flies that just orient their body position according to alternate, the static optic flow in clicks in either eye, and they just alternate every couple of seconds, exactly the way humans alternate with visual rivalry. And then you get this NCC paradigm as well, where you've got static visual input but change in perception. So that what I'm suggesting is that would be a good model maybe to look at, because they're not anesthetized, and you've got the NCC approach where you can associate with presentation from visual perception. So it's something you've spoken to Bruno about, possibly looking at.
Maybe, but that also has a lot of problem as well. So maybe we can talk about it later. But movement of the fly itself actually causes some difficult neural artifacts, which affects on many things of this kind of data. So this fly data actually is nice that we carefully already removed any kind of movement under the wake, and so we also made sure that the flies are not dead under the anesthesia, meaning that after the anesthesia they actually respond to the air shock and things like that. So this movement artifact thing is very difficult. It's almost like similar to this type of criticism, right? Like you can find lots of correlates of the binocular rivalry actually, not because of the seeing. It's more to do with the reporting, and how we can get that kind of artifacts out from flies is going to be very difficult.
You're recording their optic response.
Yeah, if you anesthetize that kind of part, then maybe we can get rid of this kind of artifacts. But that may also change the person. Anyway, maybe we'll move on. Yeah, okay. Thank you for the comments, and maybe we can discuss further.